During the freezing winter of 1942, a German U-boat commander made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Kapitan Lieutenant Werner Hartenstein was patrolling the waters off the West African coast when he spotted what appeared to be a large Allied transport ship. Without hesitation, he gave the order to fire. The torpedoes struck their target with devastating accuracy, and the ship began to sink rapidly into the dark Atlantic waters. But as Hartenstein surfaced to observe the destruction, he realized something was terribly wrong. The ship wasn't a military vessel at all. It was the Laconia, a British ocean liner carrying not just Allied soldiers, but over 1,800 Italian prisoners of war, along with hundreds of civilians, including women and children. What happened next would become one of the most extraordinary and controversial rescue operations of the entire war. Hartenstein, faced with a moral crisis that transcended the brutal logic of warfare, made an immediate decision. He would save as many people as he could, regardless of their nationality. He sent out an uncoded message in English, addressed to any Allied ships in the area. Announcing his intentions and requesting assistance, he promised not to attack any vessel that came to help with the rescue. Then he did something almost unthinkable. He ordered his crew to pull survivors from the water. Italians, British soldiers, Polish guards, civilians, it didn't matter. They hauled them aboard and gave them whatever food and medical care they could spare. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Hartenstein's U-boat, U-156, was now overcrowded with survivors clinging to every available surface. Other U-boats in the area received his distress call and came to assist. They too began picking up survivors, tying lifeboats to their hulls and towing them towards safety. A French warship was on its way to help. For a brief moment, in the middle of one of history's most savage conflicts, enemies were working together to save lives. The ocean itself seemed to hold its breath. Then an American bomber appeared in the sky above them. The pilot, Lieutenant James Harden, saw the German U-boats below. He could see the Red Cross flags Hartenstein had hoisted. He could see the lifeboats filled with survivors. He radioed back to base for instructions. The response he received was clear and cold. Attack the U-boats. Harden hesitated. Something about the scene below troubled him deeply. But orders were orders. He descended and released his bombs. The explosions tore through the water, killing survivors in the lifeboats and damaging Hartenstein's submarine. In those terrible seconds, dozens of people who had just been rescued died instantly. Hartenstein, realizing the nightmare his mercy had created, cut the lifeboats loose and gave the order to dive. The other U-boats did the same. Many of the survivors who were still on the submarines were pushed back into the sea to save the boats from sinking. The aftermath of what became known as the Laconia incident sent shockwaves through the German Navy. Admiral Dönitz, the commander of the U-boat fleet, was furious. Not because Hartenstein had tried to save lives, but because he had put his crew and submarine at risk by doing so. Dönitz immediately issued what would become known as the Laconia Order. From that point forward, U-boat commanders were explicitly forbidden from attempting to rescue survivors of sunken ships. The order stated that no assistance should be given to survivors, not even pointing them toward land or giving them food or water. The focus must be solely on destroying enemy shipping and ensuring the safety of their own crews. This order would later be used as evidence in the Nuremberg trials, where Dönitz was convicted of war crimes, though the charge related to unrestricted submarine warfare rather than the Laconia Order itself. But what happened to Werner Hartenstein? He continued his patrols, following the new orders, though those who knew him said he was never the same. Less than a year later, in March 1943, his U-boat was sunk by an American aircraft near Barbados. Hartenstein and his entire crew perished. Some of the survivors he had rescued from the Laconia later testified about his humanity and his desperate attempt to save them, regardless of which side they fought for. They spoke of a man who, for a few crucial hours, chose compassion over the machinery of war. The real question that haunts this story isn't about tactics or military strategy. It's about what happens to our humanity when we're trapped between duty and conscience. Hartenstein knew he could be attacked while rescuing those people. He knew he was violating every principle of submarine warfare. He knew it might cost him his life and the lives of his crew. And yet he couldn't bring himself to sail away and leave over 2,000 people to drown in the cold Atlantic. the American pilot who bombed the rescue. Operation later said he had nightmares about that day for the rest of his life. He never knew exactly how many people died because of his bombs, and that uncertainty tormented him. There's a final twist to this story that makes it even more unsettling. Among the survivors pulled from the water that day was a young British woman named Doris Hawkins. She was traveling with her infant daughter. When the torpedoes hit, she had grabbed the child and jumped into the sea. A German sailor pulled them both onto U-156. Hartenstein himself wrapped the baby in a blanket and gave Doris his own rations. When the American bomber attacked and Hartenstein was forced to dive, he made sure Doris and her daughter were in one of the sturdier lifeboats before cutting them loose. They survived. Years later, Doris would tell reporters that the German U-boat commander had saved her life twice, once from the sinking ship and once by making sure she wasn't on the submarine when it had to dive. She named her daughter after him, not Werner, but Hope, because that's what his actions had given her in the middle of hell. The Laconia incident remains one of the most complicated moral episodes of World War II. It shows us that even in total war, moments of grace are possible, but it also shows us how easily those moments can be shattered and how the machinery of conflict grinds on, regardless of individual acts of courage or compassion. Hartenstein's story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Good people can find themselves on any side of a war, and the decisions they make in impossible circumstances reveal something profound about human nature itself. Sometimes the most heroic thing a person can do is to simply refuse to be cruel, even when cruelty is expected, even when mercy might cost them everything.